U.S. Defense Secretary warns NATO of dim future. Defense Secretary Robert M. Gates bluntly criticized NATO nations on Friday for what he said were shortages in military spendings and political will, warning of a dim if not dismal future unless more member nations scaled up their participation in the alliance's activities. NATO has struggled for a generation to define its place in a post-Cold War world, and its member nations have frequently quarreled about the scope of the alliance's commitments and their individual responsibilities. With little indication of any change in policy among the more reluctant member nations, notably Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, Spain and Turkey, Mr. Gates' harsh words seem likely to increase pressure on an alliance already deeply strained by the differences over sharing the burden in Libya and Afghanistan. Perhaps the most significantly, Mr. Gates issued a dire warning that the United States, the traditional leader and bankroller of the alliance, is exhausted by a decade of war and its own mounting budget deficits, and simply may not see NATO as worth supporting any longer. The blunt reality is that there will be dwindling appetite and patience in the U.S. Congress and in the American body politic writ large to expend increasingly precious funds on behalf of nations that are apparently unwilling to devote their necessary resources or make the necessary changes to be serious and capable partners in their own defense, Mr. Gates said. Mr. Gates complained of what he called a too-tight membership structure between those willing to be able to pay for the price and bear the burdens of commitments and those who enjoy the benefits of NATO membership but don't want to share the risks and the costs. He added that some NATO partners are apparently willing and eager for American taxpayers to assume the growing security burden left by reductions in European defense budgets. He criticized NATO nations for failing to meet their commitments in Afghanistan or for imposing sweeping restrictions on those forces they do send, which he said hobbled the effort. And despite NATO's decision to take command over the air war in Libya, the alliance is running out of bombs after just 11 weeks, he said. The operation would fall apart without a continued large infusion of American support, Mr. Gates added, since other NATO nations have not invested in weapons required to carry out the lengthy combat operations. While Mr. Gates made his case Friday in strong language, the complaints were not entirely new. Last year, he warned the dangers of the demilitarization of Europe, and there are long-standing American frustration at the discrepancy of military capabilities and spending on the two sides of the Atlantic.
You told the American taxpayers, as I just did, that they're bearing 75% of the financial burden of the alliance. This is going to raise eyebrows. A poorly armed regime in a sparsely populated country, yet many allies are beginning to run short of munitions, requiring the U.S. once more to make up the difference.
Historic Colombian victims' compensation law signed. Colombia has passed a controversial law that aims to compensate an estimated 4 million victims of the country's long-running armed conflict. The victims' law, described by President Juan Manuel Santos as historic, allows damages to be paid to relatives of those killed. It also seeks to restore millions of hectares of stolen land to its rightful owners. Analysts say implementing the law is a huge challenge that may take a decade. The fighting is still raging as Marxist rebels continue their 47-year struggle to overthrow the government, while drug cartels continue to ship hundreds of tons of cocaine out of the country using billions of dollars for earning to undermine the state. Reporters say the compensation bill could cost up to $20 billion. Says that it's a sum of money that the country just does not have at the moment. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who attended the signing ceremony in the capital Bogota, described the law as an important advance for Colombia. But he cautioned that the work had only just begun and promised that UN would help Colombia implement the legislation. Last month, the Colombian government saw owners had lost nearly 7 million hectares of land over the past 25 years of armed conflict. Agriculture Minister Juan Camilo Restrepo said paramilitaries, rebels and drug traffickers had used a mixture of violence and fraud to take control of land which had made them immensely rich. Some armed groups which still occupy much of the stolen land have already tried to undermine the process. And there are fears that they will respond violently to attempts by the rightful owners or the state to repossess the land. On Tuesday, a campaigner for land restitution, Ana Fabricia Cordoba, was shot dead in the city of Medellin.
It is very important to accompany people in the suffering and especially in the death of their families and the victims. I remember a time in Barranca Bermeja, in the central city of the region, where we have 5 funerals a day because of the killings of the paramilitaries entering the city.
Baba Ramdev taken to hospital. Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev has been hospitalized after his condition deteriorated on the 7th day of his anti-corruption hunger strike. He had continued his fast in his own city of Haridwar after the police cracked down on his hunger strike and evicted him from the capital, Delhi. The government faced nationwide protest against the crackdown. Baba Ramdev wants the recovery of suspected bribe money allegedly held overseas. Over 180 people have been going without food at Baba Ramdev's ashram at Haridwar, reports say. If his pulse rate and blood pressure continue to go down, it may put some pressure on his heart. We found that his health is deteriorating, Yogendra Chandra Sharma, a doctor who examined the yoga guru, told Press Trust of India. Police in Delhi broke up the guru's fast over last weekend after angry exchanges with the authorities. The government has justified the crackdown on Baba Ramdev's hunger strike, saying he had reneged on his promises during the negotiations. Baba Ramdev's protest comes as the Congress-led Indian government is struggling with corruption scandals surrounding the sale of mobile phone operating licenses. He has also called for the death penalty for corrupt government officials. Baba, whose daily TV program is watched by millions, began his fast on Saturday after cabinet ministers failed to convince him to call it off. India's most highly prized artist, M.F. Hussain, dies aged 95. One of India's most famous artists, M.F. Hussain, has died in hospital in London, aged 95, after years of self-imposed exile. He had been unwell for several months. Maqbool Fida Hussain was India's most highly prized and perhaps most controversial painter, and his work sold for millions of dollars. His paintings of nude Hindu goddesses angered hardline Hindus who accused him of obscenity. He left India in 2006 and took up Qatari nationality in 2010. Mr. Hussain also made 2 Bollywood films, although both failed at the box office. The maverick artist was often called the Picasso of India and influenced a whole generation of artists in the country. Pakistan soldiers held over videoed killing of Karachi boy. Police in Karachi, Pakistan say they have arrested 2 paramilitary soldiers seen on video killing a young man. Video footage shows the man, Sarfaz Shah, begging for his life before being shot by 6 members of the Sindh Rangers paramilitary force. The Rangers say the young man was caught trying to rob someone. His family denies this. An inquiry is already underway into the killing of 5 unarmed Chechens last month by security forces. The video from Karachi, which has been broadcast widely in Pakistani television, is disturbing to watch. It shows a young man in black t-shirt being dragged by his hair in a public park by a man in plain clothes. He is pushed towards a group of Sindh Rangers who are in uniform and armed. The young man, who does not appear to be armed, pleads for his life as one of the Rangers points a gun at his neck. We'll move on to the business world. Toyota forecasts profit slump after earthquake. Japanese car giant Toyota has said it expects profits for this financial year to be sharply lower than last year, due in large part to the massive earthquake in March that disrupted production. The car maker forecasts net profits of 280 billion yen, that means $3.5 billion for the year, to the end of March, down a third on the 408 billion yen it made last year. It said revenues would fall slightly to 8.2 trillion yen. Toyota has said it hopes to return to 90% capacity in Japan this month. Profits in the first half of the year would be hit particularly hard, the company said. Thereafter, business is expected to pick up, although the effects of the earthquake and the resulting tsunami would be felt for a long time, the world's largest car maker said. Welcome to the world of science. Global warming since 1995, now significant. Climate warming since 1995 is now statistically significant, according to Phil Jones, the UK scientist targeted in the ClimateGate affair. Last year, he told BBC News that post-1995 warming was not significant, a statement still seen on blogs critical of the idea of man-made climate change. But another year of data has pushed the trend past a threshold usually used to assess whether the trends are real. Dr. Jones says this shows the importance of using longer records for analysis. And in sports, with fashion, Yankees show Indians they have had enough. It all may have come a few days too late. But after the 3-game sweep at the hands of the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees on Friday night finally displayed the sort of intensity and emotion and generally strong play that they had so lacked in an otherwise freckless week. With the young starter Ivan Nova producing one of his best performances of the season, the Yankees jumped to an early lead against the slumping Cleveland Indians and padded it relentlessly, cruising to an 11-7 win in the opener of a 4-game series at Yankee Stadium. I think it was important after what we went through the last few days, Girardi said. Nova 5-4 was super from the outset, forming a steady groove around the 4-seam fastball that peaked at 95 miles per hour. He did not allow a runner to reach scoring position until the 5th inning, and of his 100 pitches, 66 were strikes. He pitched 7 innings, allowing 2 runs, 4 hits and 3 walks. He struck out 6 and said afterward that he had not felt better on the mound all year. And before we close today's bulletin of news analysis, let's have a recap of the main points. Egypt's economy slows to a crawl. Revolt is tested. Fearing assault, more Syrians flee into Turkey. Ex-N.S.A. Aide Gains Plea Deal in leak case. Setback to U.S. U.S. Defense Secretary warns NATO of dim future. Historic Colombian victims compensation law signed. Baba Ramdev taken to hospital. And there we end today's bulletin of news analysis. Be with us in the coming weeks too. Thank you.